Hi, Jake. I hope you are having a wonderful time so far. And this is the video that's going to go along with lesson 3. And we're going to be taking a look at parts of expressions and learning the vocabulary for parts of expressions. So let's start with what are we learning? And today we're going to be learning to identify parts of an expression using mathematical terms. And that vocabulary is going to be very important. So I want you to make sure that you're following along and you can underline, highlight, indicate on your notes the terms and the words that you want to make sure that you remember. And why is this important? This is a foundational skill for success in algebra. You need to know these terms. You need to understand what makes an expression, or a little bit later when we look at that, what makes an equation. And this is how you're going to know you've been successful. You'll be able to look at the expression and identify the terms. So here we go with the vocabulary that you need to know. So a variable is a letter or symbol that represents an unknown value. These are some examples of what a variable could be. It could be any letter in the alphabet, and it stands for an unknown value. And a coefficient is the number that you will see in front of a variable. And that coefficient is a representation of how many times the number is used to multiply a variable. So in this case, we have 3 times A. In this one, we have 5 times W, 12 times C, 10 times R. And a constant is a number on its own in an equation or an expression. So if you see a number that does not have a variable after it, that's called a constant. The value of that number in that expression will not change. The value of the coefficient and the variable will change if you were to find out what the variable represented. Then 3 times that value would have a different meaning. Operator is the symbol that represents an operation. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, you'll either see it as this asterisk for multiplication or with the multiplication symbol you learned in elementary school, the X to represent multiplication or division. And a term is number or number groups separated by operation symbols. So 4 times R is a term. W is a term. 15 is a term. 25 times X is a term. All of those are terms. Now, we're going to actually skip problem of the day and go to input model. So input model, I want you focused here, listening to what I'm doing, because then you're going to need to use the information here to complete structured guided practice, final check for understanding, and then either the re-engage or the homework page that you have that all go together with this lesson. So again, I'm going to know I'm successful if I can look at the term or look at the expression and identify the terms. So I'm going to look at this expression here. And the first thing I need to find are the variables. Well, I know the variable is a letter that represents an unknown amount. So my variables for this expression are E and F. Put a comma in between them. Terms. Well, I know that the terms can be a variable and a coefficient, or just a variable, or just a constant. So I'm going to underline the terms that I see here. And I have 3 times E. I also have a variable F, and I have a constant 6. Now, I want coefficients. Again, I know the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So I'm going to look here, and I have a 3 in front of the E. So that's my coefficient. The 6 is not a coefficient because it's just a number by itself. That's a constant. And that leads me to my last one here. Constant for that expression. And the constant is a 6. So now on to the second teacher input. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look for the variables. The variables, again, is a letter that represents an unknown amount. So I have y and x. Those are my two variables. Now I have terms. I want to know how many terms I have in this expression. And I know that a term can be a coefficient and a variable. So there's a term. There's another coefficient and a variable. And there's a constant. So the terms that I have for this, 4 times y, 2 times x, and 3. Coefficients. Coefficients are the numbers in front of the variable. So my coefficients are 4 and 2. And constants. The constant is a number all by itself. And that constant is 3. Okay? So now I want you to go to structured guided practice. And you're going to work through the 2 examples here. And you're going to identify the variables, the terms, the coefficients, and the constants. And there are 2 structured guided practice examples to work through. So I would say take 2 minutes, pause the video here, complete the 2 structured guided practices, and then check back in to see how you did. Okay? So pause the video and complete structured guided practice. So I want the variables, and looking at my expression, I have y and d as my variables. Now I want the terms. And again, terms are numbers, or numbers and variables, or just variables. So my terms, 10, y, and 5 times d. And now I need my coefficients. The coefficient is the number in front of the variable. And I did not mention this on the earlier one, but I want to bring it up now. I have a coefficient of 5. And I have a y here, but actually there is an invisible 1 in front of that y. Mathematicians do not write it down because they feel it would just be confusing and not needed, and it would take some time to go ahead and write the 1, and they feel it's not necessary. So it's understood there's a 1 in front. So I'm going to put a 1 here in front of that y, just so that you're understanding that this is not just a variable, but there's also an invisible 1 in front of it. And then constants. The constant is 10. Okay? Let's check the second structured guided practice. And again, I want my variables. I have a y and I have an x. And terms, I have 1, 2, 3 terms. 8 times y, 3 times x, and 9. And coefficients. The coefficient is the number in front of the variable. My coefficients are 8 and 3. And constants. The constant is a number that is not in front of a variable. And I have one constant, and that is 9. Now, I have no doubt that you got all of these correct. So on to final check for understanding. And again, take 2 minutes, pause the video, complete the final check for understanding, and then I'll have you complete the student practice and any other homework pages that I included. So here we go. Oh, pause the video and then turn it back in after the 2 minutes. And now, variables, G and H. And terms, well, there's 1, 2, 3. So I have 10, I have 3 times G, and I have 7 times H. Remember, terms are separated by operation signs. And coefficients, I have a 3 and a 7 as coefficients. And constants, that is a number by itself. It's not in front of a variable. It's just the number alone. And you have 10. Let's check. I guess that was the only one. Okay. So now you're going to go on to the student practice, and you're going to identify the variables, the terms, the coefficients, and the constants. And I'm not going to go through these on the video because I believe you have a good understanding of what you need to do now. So complete these, and you will turn everything in when you return from, or when you return to school, I should say. Okay? And remember, you can always email me if you have a question about any of the work that you have. Send me an email, let me know how you're doing, and if you have any questions, and I will get back to you. So this ends this first video. Take care, have fun, and I will see you after Thanksgiving.